A very warm good evening to the august gathering present here. Myself, Shwetakshi Mishra. I am pursuing my BSc degree in biotechnology from Dempe College of Arts and Science, Goa. The topic for today's discussion is Understanding Forensic Sciences. I would like to express my views and understanding on this topic because, being a biotechnology student, we have forensic science as a subject during the course. Also, with rising crime cases, cyber crimes, humors, and facts on bioweapons, wars, etc. So, we must have basic knowledge on the functioning of forensic laboratories. This will help us better appreciate hard work of forensic experts while investigating crime scenes. Before we move on, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Indian Science Communicators group and Anil Tripathi sir for giving me this opportunity to express my views in this prestigious platform. Without further ado, let's begin today's session. It's sharp 5. We will be discussing on understanding forensic sciences. During the session, we shall be discussing about functions of forensic science, basic characters or terms in forensic science. We'll also look at the principles that govern the field of forensic sciences, and also we'll see through different branches of forensic science and how they function and what are the tasks they perform. Finally, we'll look at the steps involved while investigating a crime scene, and we will also see some of the CFS laboratories in India. To begin, let's explore what exactly is a forensic science. Now, the term forensic science is derived from two Latin words, forensic, which means something related to crime investigations, and science, as we all know, is a Latin word from senita, meaning knowledge. So, forensic science comes under the field of applied sciences, in which we take and gather knowledge from the basic sciences and help to explore the crime investigations by providing evidences and facilitate administration of criminal justice. So, a way through which we can apply knowledge of our basic science to investigate a crime and give justice is the sole purpose of forensic science. Moving further, we have seen the definition of forensic science, which makes it very evident that what could be the functions of forensic science. The first and the most important function is to establish corpus delicti. Now, corpus delicti is a forensic term which means to analyze whether a crime has really occurred or not. Very often, we see that people make false claim that a crime has happened in order to get popularized or to get money from different policies. But forensic science help to actually analyze whether it is a myth or actually a crime has occurred. And if there is establishment of corpus delicti, then modus operandi is found. Modus operandi means what type of crime has occurred, whether it is a murder, it's a robbery, or it's a suicide case. All things functions under forensic science. After this, the next step is to provide ease in investigations. So, forensic experts perform different analysis and further investigate crime scenes to see what could be the evidences which can tell that who is the killer or who is the person who is guilty. So, this in a way finally helps to provide justice to the innocent people, which may be punished due to some false claim, and actually punish the right individual. So, these are the basic pillars by which the forensic science functions. Now, before we move further, we should know the basic characters which are involved in forensic investigations. The first one is the crime scene, the crime. So, crime is a character, an important character of forensic science, which is something which is harming an individual or a group, a community, an entire country, or even the entire globe. For example, when we talk about terrorism, the terrorism is emotionally harming all the individuals throughout the country. So it's a global level crime. Whereas when we talk about a murder, it is just the person who has killed, who is being killed, is the person involved in the crime. So this is about crime, and we have seen various types. It could be a murder, it could be robbery or pickpocketing, blackmail or terrorism, forgery. Now, when sometimes people make false signatures or wrong documents, it is also a part of crime, which is being analyzed by forensic examinations. Smuggling of drugs, smuggling of small children, and human parts like kidneys, liver, all these are type of worst crime types. And cyber crimes also, they are rising day by day. So forensic science has this character of crime. Another term which is used is the crime scene. So the location at which the crime has occurred is called the crime scene. The crime scene is a place where the crime has taken place, and it is the area where a lot of evidences can be found which can help find the killer or the person who is guilty. Now, depending upon the location, the crime scene can be an indoor scene like a house or a building, which is comparatively smaller. Then there is outdoor scenes, that means some area which has a huge area, like for example in the figure there is an isolated area which is quite vast where the outdoor scene we can say. And then there are in between areas between the outdoor and indoor, which is the conveyance scene. So conveyance scene is the transport. So some crimes which are happening in between the transports will come under the conveyance scene. And also there is virtual scene. So a specific device, electronic device, may it be a laptop, computer, or any other gadget which is being hacked or under influence of a cyber crime, will be seized, and that will become the crime scene in such cases. Moving further, we have some more terms. We say a victim. A victim is a person who is physically or emotionally harmed due to crime. So for example, if there was a robbery at the home, so the owner was beaten and the robbers take up the money. Now the owner will be suffering from some injuries, so he will be said as the victim. Whereas suspects will be the group of people who the police thinks could be guilty of the crime. But they are not exactly criminals. They may be criminals. Some of them may be criminals. This is suspect. And when we talk about investigating officer, it is the person or the officer who is appointed to conduct investigation in a particular crime scene. Moving further, we have another important term or character which is very essential. We called it as evidences. Now, evidences refers to certain objects and facts which are found at crime scene that could help us investigate who is the person who is guilty. Now, evidences could be direct evidences. That means they could be eyewitnesses, or if the victim have survived, or even the suspects. They will tell us the story of what has exactly happened at the scene of crime. And there are also physical evidences like some fingerprints, documents, footprints, or weapons which are found at the scene of crime. Now, when we talk about forensic science, we mostly deal with physical evidences and analyze them, because direct evidences are not always correct. They can cook up stories, as well as they can lie or change their statements. So we rely only on physical evidences. Having spoken about all this, let's discuss the principles of forensic science. We know that for any science to function, there should be certain principles and laws that can govern them. So forensic science, being an applied science field, it also has its own fundamental principles and laws. So let's discuss each of them. The first one is the law of individuality. It states that every object is unique in its own sense and cannot be replicated. So as you can see, this law is very well applied in fingerprinting. So we know that we all have unique fingerprints, and even two twins do not have identical fingerprints. So that means if there is fingerprints found at the crime scene, then they will be unique to an individual. Similarly, it applies to all other objects. For example, here there are two vases. So suppose one of the vases was hit upon a person and he died. So this becomes the murder weapon. But the killer is very smart and he changes the vase with another one. But this is not identical to the other one. It may have different pattern, or if it is identical, still it may not have exactly the same amount of fingerprints or same location of fingerprints as it was present in the previous vase. So no two objects can exactly be identical. Another example, another principle is the principle of exchange. So principle of exchange states that when a victim and the culprit comes in contact, there is always a mutual exchange of material between one another. So as you can see, this is a murder scene in which there is a victim who is died and there is a culprit or the killer. So when the killer was coming to kill this person, there was an exchange of blood between them. So this will the killer will run away, but there will be some substances like hair follicles of the victim or fibers of his cloth or any other thing will definitely come in contact with the victim. And when the victim's body is analyzed, that can be examined. So that is the principle of exchange. The next law of forensic science is the law of probability. So law of probability says that whenever we find evidences at the crime scene, we are just talking about the physical evidences. So these evidences have a probability that they may be unconsciously kept by the criminal or the culprit, or it can be even planned. So they would purposely keep certain things in order to make false claims about another person who is innocent. So there is always a probability about the finding of evidences at the crime scene. Another one is principle of comparison. This is very important principle of forensic science which emphasizes on the importance of having a comparison sample. For example, if there is a child and there are three suspects which says that they are the parents of that individual. Now, the DNA profile of the child is taken and the DNA profiles of the suspects is taken. Comparing these two, we can find that who is the parent of the individual. But suppose there were no DNA samples of the suspects and only DNA sequencing was done for the child, then there is no point of that DNA sequence because there is nothing to compare. So that emphasizes comparison sample is very essential. Similarly is the case with any crime scene. If there is crime, there should be suspects. Otherwise, who will we compare? So this is principle of comparison. Next principle is principle of analysis. Principle of analysis emphasizes on the necessity of correctly and following and packaging all the samples which are found at the crime scene. So as you can see in the figure, this forensic expert is lifting the bullet which was found at the crime scene by using a forceps and using this Ziploc bag and wearing gloves. He's even measuring and numbering the evidence. So all this is very necessary in order to get correct analysis after doing the analysis of the sample. If it was in a haywire manner, then the correct analysis cannot be conducted. Another law is the law of progressive change. So progressive change means the gradual change which occurs in any of the evidence. So this law emphasizes that we should be very quick enough to investigate a crime scene. For example, if a person has suffered from an injury which has occurred during some crime, but if sudden actions are not taken, then the injury will start healing up. Similarly, in case of a crime scene, if the scene is not seized properly in proper time, then what will happen? The killer may come and he will exchange the evidences. So we do not get the correct results which were expected. So that is why uh, we should not delay. So these were the 6 major principles which governs the forensic science. Now let's move on to discuss different branches of forensic science. We have a lot of branches like the biology division, the chemistry division, physics and documentation sections, cyber divisions, and a lot more. But we will concisely discuss about only these divisions. The first one is the biology division of forensic science. So there are a lot of subdivisions and they are quite broad as well. The first one is the general division, then we have the serology, toxicology, DNA profiling, fingerprinting, injuries, and a lot of other subdivisions under the biology section. But we will be discussing about these first. The first one is the general biology subdivision. So it is all about conducting the postmortem and also autopsy reports. It may also include the anatomical analysis or examinations of bones, teeth, hair, and a lot more things. It also includes a small part of microbiology wherein we could observe some of the pathogens or some other objects which are present at the scene of crime. Next, we move on to the serology subdivision of biology. So, this serology division mostly deals with a sort of liquid type substance examinations like blood, semen, saliva, sweat, or any other sort of liquids which are present at the crime scene. So, for example, you can see there is the taking up of sample, the blood sample from the scene of crime. There could be even a sweat sample which can be taken so that we can understand the nature, grouping, and further carry out investigations. The next division, which exclusively focuses on DNA, is the DNA profiling subdivision. So we know that DNA, that is deoxyribonucleic acid, is the main basis for all the life forms. In humans, we have the 4 base pairs ATGC, which makes up the sequences. Now, all humans have 90% of same DNA sequence, but 10% of the DNA sequence vary from each individual. This 10% of DNA sequence can be analyzed in order to find the culprit. Now, the DNA samples can be taken up from the crime scene, like some blood stain, semen, saliva, urine, or some of the other tissue cells. It can be also taken up from the victim's body and even fresh tissue samples and many other things like hair follicles would work. Taking out DNA and making a DNA profile will help us to find the exact killer. So here there is an example given. This is the DNA profile of the victim, and this is the DNA of some substance which was found at the scene of crime. Suspects, the DNA found from the crime scene, when compared to these 3 suspects, will tell us who is the killer. So you can see then from the 3 suspects, the crime scene DNA matches with the suspect 2. That means he is the killer. So this is quite a sophisticated and costly method, but it helps in best analyze the and finding the investigations. The next one is the toxicology section of the biology division. Toxicology section deals with all sorts of poisons to understand their nature, origin, properties, and a lot more. For example, we generally say all sorts of toxicologies or toxins as poisons. They could be corrosives. So in case of acid attacks or some chemical compounds which were thrown off, the investigation is carried out by the toxicology section. They will find out whether which type of strong acid it was, either HCl, H2SO4 or some other. It could be even a strong alkali like NaOH or KOH. Then the cause of death could be due to irritants like inorganic metals and non-metals like zinc, iodine, etc. And then there could be Even organic compounds like snake venom, snake bites, these are also a cause of death in few cases. They could even examine the mechanical toxins or poison like diamond dust or glass powder. Glass powder is often crushed and added to food items to kill people. Such cases happen. So, such sorts of investigations are also carried out by the toxicology section. Even knowing about different drugs, if there is some smuggling and some drug evidences are found, then analyzing them, classifying them, all is the work of the toxicology section. Moving further, we have the fingerprinting section. This is all about fingerprints. So in the left, you can see there are different patterns of fingerprints, and combining these patterns, we all have a unique set of fingerprints with us. Now, fingerprints are actually generated when we touch any surface and the glands in our fingertips secretes substances which makes up the fingerprints. Now, the uniqueness and the universality of fingerprints makes it the sole basis for crime investigations. Also, fingerprinting is very easy to record and even to classify. Now let's discuss about the different types of fingerprints which we found at the crime scene. All these fingerprints are called chance fingerprints because there is a chance that we find fingerprints at the crime scene. These fingerprints could be visible. For example, if there was a murder happened, the killer have the blood in his hand of the victim. He touches the surface, a wall surface for example, and the fingerprint is formed. Now this fingerprint will be of the individual and it is visible because of the color of blood. But very often we don't get such fingerprints. The fingerprints which we get is the latent or invisible fingerprints. That means they are not visible until we examine them. And there are also plastic fingerprints which are also sometimes visible or not visible, but they are found at hard surfaces. So it requires special types of photography in order to examine them. When we talk about the most common type of fingerprints found at crime scene, they are the latent fingerprints. They can be analyzed by using either a iodine fuming gun method or the powder method. Now these photographs are from our college while doing practicals. You can see this is a fuming gun, iodine fuming gun. In between there is a crystal of iodine, and when it is subjected to heating, it will release the iodine fumes. Now when iodine fumes come in contact with any substance which has fingerprints, it makes a complex with the secretions and iodine and the fingerprints appear. But this is its limitation. We cannot keep it for a long time. The other method we use is the powder method. So there are a chemical composition of the powders of different colors like black, white, silver or many others, and then when we put this powder and brush it using a very fine brush, usually we use the ostrich feather brush or even magnetic brushes are used, so then we can reveal the fingerprint. So if there are fingerprints on the white surface, we will use a black powder and vice versa. So this is very helpful in investigating the crime scene. One other section under biology is related to injuries. Now I have not put pictures of real images. Rather, I have used clip arts because they may be not very good to see through. But just for understanding, we can have a look at the injuries, the different types of injuries which the biology division examines. There could be abrasions, bruises, inside wounds, punctures. They are injuries caused during explosives, cutthroat, burns, frost bites, and even biological attacks. So, if we examine such types of injuries, we can understand what would have happened at the crime scene. Whether it was an accident, it was a fall, or someone else have killed the person using a weapon, what sort of weapon it was, or whether it was a suicide case wherein the person has injured himself. Then after understanding this, if it is a case of death, then they can even find out the timing of death. For this, we majorly use the process of rigor mortis. So rigor mortis is another forensic term which means stiffness in the body. So if there is stiffness in the dead body, in the face and neck region, this means the person has only died 1 to 2 hours before. If there is stiffness in the upper limbs, that means 2 to 4 hours have been passed after the death. Rigor mortis of the lower limbs finds that it is 4 to 6 hours after death, and if the entire body is stiff, that means 6 or more hours have been crossed after the death of the individual. Even there are post-mortem staining occurring. So we know that when death occurs, all the biological processes stops. So the body starts to cool down and no oxygen is there inside the body. So there will be changes in the color of the body. It will turn bluish. So if this happens, there is post-mortem staining. It means the person have crossed 2 hours after that. Also, there is accumulation of blood. So the blood will start coagulating after certain period of time, which is usually after 7 hours. And if we find a dead body which is completely cool and there is no rigor mortis, this means that almost 16 hours or more than 16 hours have passed. So this is a way how we can examine a dead body and relate to the time at which the crime has occurred. All this was about the biological division. Next, we will move on to the chemistry division. Now, chemistry section, as the name suggests, will be all related to the chemical compounds and substances. So, in case of, for example, fire cases, we need to examine the type of compound which has caused fire. Either it is a petroleum product or it is an explosive which is used. What sort of product it was? It was a kerosene or some other type of substance which has caused. So all this examination is carried out by the chemistry section. Also, when there is adulteration cases, not always related to food, but also in case of metals like gold or some construction materials, then the chemistry section will deal with. So, for example, if there was some bridge which has fallen, then the people which make claims that this was due to the bad construction material, so this has to be analyzed by the chemistry division. Also, when there are cases of smuggling, the chemistry division needs to know what type of drug was struggled, whether it was heroin, cocaine, or some other sorts of drugs. And then when if there is a victim, then while doing defense from the killer or other person who was trying to harm, there are some things like dyes, paints, which could come in the contact of the body of the victim. So understanding what type of particle it is the function of the chemistry division. Finally, one other use or task which chemistry division performs is about the agricultural related issues. So if there are few people who are using toxins in their farms, like a high amount of fertilizers, pesticides, so this is not good. Though they will get more yield, but it is toxic to the nature and for the human consumption as well. So such cases are also sought out by the chemistry division. When we talk about physics division, the first thing which we think of is the ballistics. So ballistic division is a sub branch, rather a major branch of the physics division, which will tell us almost everything about the firearm which was used, which sort of bullet, what was the angle, what was the timing, what was the range, and a lot more things about the weapon which is used. But physics division also functions in restoration of certain marks and tools. Like here you can see the footprints are being examined and taken up. This is the task under the physical division. Also restoration of some parts which have been subjected to some or the other harm can be done by the physics division. When we talk about the documentation division of forensic science, it is about investigating questioned documents. Now, question documents are those documents whose authenticity is in dispute. That means it has been questioned that it is not the correct form, or some signature is false. Such types of cases are handled by the documentation division. So if it is a written, then there will be handwriting identification, ink examination, the examination of the writing material, like what sort of paper it was, and also aging of the document will be conducted. If it is if it is a printed paper, which we most oftenly use, then they will analyze by various techniques that whether the question document is being examined or it is real one. Also, the aging will help. So that is the task which the documentation division works. Cyber division is throughout active. It keeps a key eye on in overlooking that if there is some cyber stocks happening, there is child progeny, pornography. Sorry. So like we have in between cases where of blue whale or such other sorts of game which were killing the lives of small children. So all these things are taken care of by the cyber division. Also, if there are some cases in which the hacker is using online methods to withdraw money from the accounts, or there is some terrorism, or just for fun some of the hackers are hacking their devices of different individuals, so all sort of things are related to the digital world will be handled by the cyber division. Finally, I think it was very clear about the different branches, principles, and the basics of forensics. Now we'll move on to actually see how a crime scene is examined. There are different aspects and different steps which are involved while doing investigating a crime scene. First thing is to seize and secure crime scene, bring two respectable observers, check victim's breath, examine crime scene, and assign the task to officers. Let's have a look at each of them. The first one is to seize and secure the crime scene. Now it is very important to immediately come and take action by seizing the entire crime scene. So for here you can see the photograph. It is a crime scene simulation which was done during our practicals. So the first thing we need to do is to cover the entire area so that no other individual except the investigating officers is allowed to enter in. The next thing is to bring two respectable observers who are going to see what task are we performing inside the crime scene. Now why this is important? Because whenever the forensic examination is completed and the case goes to a court, the judiciary will not accept that we have performed certain crimes, we have performed some certain examinations. So these two individuals will give the statements that yes, so and these investigating officers have conducted such task in such manner. So that is why bringing two respected observer from near side is important. These observers are not the suspects, because suspects can again make false claims. These are people who are not really related to the crime scene but found nearby. The next thing is to check the victim's breath. So it is very important that if the individual is still alive, we should give medical care. So immediately when we enter the crime scene, the first thing is to check whether the victim is alive. If it is alive, just quickly take the photographs and make the line and give the medical support to the individual. If the person is dead, then we can take images from different locations and also make the line to see how the person has been murdered or killed. After this body will go for the further postmortems. Now, the next thing to do is to examine the entire crime scene. There are different methods by which the crime scene can be investigated. There is a zonal method. Zonal method is a way in which we divide the crime scene into different squares and examine each of the square in very enthusiastically. And then this is majorly used in outdoor scenes because the area is very huge. Another method is the wheel method. So we divide the crime scene into quadrants and then find the different evidences present. There is also a stripe method in which the officers will go in a horizontal manner so that they don't miss out on any of the evidences present at the crime scene. There is also a base coordinate method in which there are two bases which are fixed, and then the going radially will help investigate the crime scenes. There are also two fixed point methods and spiral methods which are used for investigating a crime scene. Now, this spiral method could be either from the perimeter to the core or from the core to perimeter. Both ways can be done. The next important thing is to assign the tasks to the officers. There is one main investigating officer which is going to handle the entire scene of crime. But there is a lot of things to be done at the crime scene which is not possible for just one person to carry out. So there is a whole group or a team which goes to the crime scene. So then different tasks are assigned. One person or one officer will measure the directions of the crime scene. So one person will be exclusively appointed to just look at the directions of the crime scene, each evidence, at what direction it was found. That is the person who is going to do this. One will be the photographer who is going to take the photographs of each and every evidence from long range, short range, medium range, from different angles. Then there will be a person who is going to number the physical evidences found. As you can see, there are different numbers which are placed so that we don't miss out on any evidence and do not repeat any evidence. Also, measurement of each type of evidence is necessary. Even if it is a small cigarette, it has to be measured. This will help examine some of the other way. For example, if the measurement is taken, there is a chance that we can know from which company this cigarette is. So this will help relate to different links. It will link a chain of evidences against an guilty. Also, preparation of field notes is important. So in field notes, we mention about the location of the crime scene, then what could be the cause of the victim death, whether it is a poison. It's just a preliminary examination. It's not necessary that whatever we write is correct, but at least it should give a basic idea to the forensic experts before conducting their investigations. Also, rough sketching of crime scene is necessary. This rough sketching is not to be drawn in an artistic manner, but just to look at the different things which are present. Also, finding fingerprints. This is really a tedious task. There will be 2 or 3 persons who will just keep on powdering the powders across to find the chance fingerprints. Also, there will be a group of people who will survey in the nearby areas. Nearby areas means the areas which are just outside the crime scene. They may even find some footprint of the individual or something or the other sort. So this is the survey of the nearby area. Then even there will be questioning to the people or the suspects. They could be eyewitnesses or some other suspects. So they will be questioned. And then after this, when all the things are analyzed in the laboratories, they will link the evidences together to find the culprit. After this is done, the judiciary will give the correct punishment. Now, finally, we have 7 major central forensic science laboratories in India. They are located in Hyderabad, Kolkata, Chandigarh, New Delhi, Guwahati, Bhopal, and Pune. Apart from this, every state have its own forensic laboratory. So this was all about which I wish to share. Again, I would express my sincere gratitude and thank to this prestigious platform for giving me this opportunity to express my views in this topic. Thank you all for your patient listening. Thank you.